Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video is going to be focused on a little chicken brine I developed. Against my usual style, I wanted to keep this simple, so pretty much the only added flavor note is the roasted garlic you are seeing on camera right now. Later in the video, you will see some honey being used as well, but I need to tweak it in the future before I would call this an actual honey garlic brine. The roasting parameters I used was 150 Celsius and in my ANOVA 50% around 35 minutes. In a regular oven without steam, I would simply just wrap the heads of garlic tightly in foil. And in particular, this is somewhat special solo garlic from China. Usually I try to get local garlic, but I actually really like the shape and the flavor of this specific garlic. Now we turn to the chicken butchering, and for comparison, I want to show a clip from another YouTuber that I really like, Glenn and Friends. Several times he has demonstrated a version of spatchcocking where you separate the leg section from the breast. Essentially, he is following along the seam between the legs and the breast section, but very quickly chops straight down toward the board, and as you might see, this chops straight through the chicken oyster, which is sort of a prized muscle just above the thighs of the chicken on the backbone. So, in my version of the butchering, you can see my dad is following the same seam, but we continue up the rib cage, essentially. I would say it's less that we are cutting the chicken in half and more that we are taking the breast section off of the rest of the chicken. So hopefully you can see that by leaving more of the backbone attached to the leg section, we preserve the precious chicken oysters. From there, we also decided to take the breast off the bone, but leave it on. We'll be using that for a future video. And the wings could have been cooked, but I decided to save the wings and the breastbone for chicken stock. Obviously, you could break down this chicken much, much further, but I wanted to keep things simple, and I liked the idea of roasting off the entire leg section. I was also comparing two slightly different versions of my brine. You can see a demonstration of the butchering one more time. Now we turn to the real focus of the video, which is the brine recipe. So off camera, we have weighed all of the chicken parts we are going to brine. we have also separately measured the total water as well as the dry ingredients we are going to use. From that, we are directly measuring honey into a mixing bowl because it is the least convenient to measure. And with most of the ingredients, including the honey, I'm trying to be fairly accurate because I have an intended equilibrium concentration of salt and sugar in mind. For something like roasted garlic can also be inconvenient to measure something like heads of garlic, but because I was actually using these very small individual heads of solo garlic, it was quite convenient to have a measurement ratio to shoot for. After the garlic was the dry ingredients, which in this case was just salt and a little bit of MSG. We are then using some of our pre-measured water to break down the garlic, dissolve the honey and other dry seasonings. Once that is well incorporated, it goes into a plastic bag with chicken. We are then using the rest of our pre-measured water to basically rinse the bowl and make sure we get all. And I wanted to do a brine for several reasons. One, honey and roasted garlic would be very difficult to evenly distribute over chicken pieces, and while I feel like a dry cure is a little more trendy these days, a brine does have some fundamental differences. Some of that water is going to be drawn directly into the chicken flesh. So the final product will be juicier, and we aren't diluting the flavor because we've calibrated equilibrium salt, sugar, and used a very slight flavor enhancer with MSG. Now I was comparing two slightly different versions of my brine to see what I preferred, so I will run through that quickly. You can see in the footage we are measuring the water a little bit different, but that was just a matter of convenience and not a change in the recipe. The real difference was some additional optional ingredients, mainly the other savory compounds, disodium inosonate guanylate, which work similarly and synergistically to MS. I also wanted to try adding a very small amount of orange blossom water. At the end of the day, these two versions were very close. I think I slightly preferred version 2 because of the added savory compounds, but I did not notice the orange blossom water. What you didn't see is that this chicken was in the brine roughly 15 hours, and then I took it out of the brine and put it on a rack in the fridge for roughly 3 hours for the exterior to start drying. We brushed it with a little bit of neutral oil and we put it under the broiler for the first phase of cooking. I'll be honest that this was not ideal chicken cooking. I was more just experimenting with some different techniques, but at the end of the day, I wanted cooked chicken so I could taste the interior flavor of the brine. I'm essentially replicating the same profile as I did with the Florentine steak. So, broiling, gentle cooking, and then a second broil. Obviously, with a higher final internal target, we went for around 70 Celsius internal, but I think the gentle phase to reach that internal target really helped preserve of the extra juiciness that we added with the brining process. Despite what I would do different with the actual chicken cooking, the end result was really delicious and I could really taste the roasted garlic and it was well seasoned all the way through. I think maybe 10 or so years ago, brining and marinating was overused and overemphasized, and now the pendulum has sort of swung in the opposite extreme, where a lot of people are skeptical or against it. The truth is somewhere in the middle, where obviously salt, sugar, several other savory and flavor compounds will penetrate all the way through. However, there may be certain ingredients with very limited permeability and limited efficacy in terms of the return on investment. But I hope you try this brine recipe. As always, all of the details will be in the description. I will make adjustments in the future so that you can taste the honey more, but the sweetness does bring a really delicious, full balance to the garlic flavor. Please let me know if you have any questions about this recipe. Stay tuned for future chicken recipes. Otherwise, thank you for watching.